Hello, Chris from the Headache and Pain Management Centre here for this Wednesday of National Headache and Migraine Week. It's day 3 of National Headache and Migraine Week, and today we are talking Weird Wednesday, Weird Headache and Migraine Wednesday, because it's all about learning about all these different things that can actually be caused by the upper cervical spine that perhaps we didn't know that it was. So if you are joining us, type in below and say hello, and more than happy to have a chat with you about all of that. So we get a lot of different conditions that come in through the clinic because it is self-referred. So we don't get a lot of doctors' referrals come to see us. It's actually quite rare for doctors to refer directly to us, and quite often we're actually just getting referrals from the internet or from the lovely people here on Facebook, and obviously via word of mouth as well. Now, because we see all of these different people that aren't referred by doctors, we see a whole range of different weird and wonderful symptoms that perhaps don't make a lot of sense, probably because people at the wit's end and the medical system don't know what to do with them. So a few of the conditions I've actually listed in the status comment. So, you know, abdominal migraine is one of them, cyclic vomiting syndrome is another one, vestibular headache is another one. So you've actually got these different types of symptoms and syndromes where there's a lot of mystery around what might the cause of it be. So for example, abdominal migraine. So if you haven't heard of this one, it's actually one that affects predominantly kids, where they get all of the symptoms and hallmarks of a migraine happen, where you have a bit of a lead-in period followed by the attack itself, followed by a downward period. But instead of getting a lot of head pain, quite often they get a lot of gut pain instead, like stomach pain. So they'll feel nausea, they'll feel dizziness, they'll feel sensitive to light and sound, and their pain will actually be in their stomach. It'll feel like they've been kicked in the guts, the poor little things. If you are joining us, type in and say hello. I can see that there's quite a few having a look this afternoon. It's really good that you're joining us. So yes, with abdominal migraine, that's what can happen. And what can happen with that is that with these poor kids, when they turn 13, 14 years old, what can happen is their tummy migraine turns into a head migraine after that. So their pain goes into the head. So that's one type. The second type is cyclic vomiting syndrome, which again is another type of very strange condition that we have seen here at the clinic. There's probably around about, I could probably count them on 2 hands the amount of times I've seen this. It's quite uncommon. But what it is, it's actually a migraine that happens, but there's actually no head pain involved. It's actually all gastrointestinal. It's all vomiting and all number 2s, shall I say. And quite often this can actually come from the neck. And the reason why it can, as abdominal migraine can as well, is because the upper neck actually goes into the part of the brainstem that controls all of these different functions like nausea and a lot of the other sort of, how can I say, automatic functions of your body. So quite often it's to do with constipation or diarrhea and things of that nature as well. So we have seen cases where there is cyclic vomiting syndrome happening, and it's actually as a result of the neck, which is the cause. And sometimes as well we can look at some other muscles in the gut as well. But we have seen this happen. In fact, it was actually made famous in an episode of Grey's Anatomy a few years ago, where there was a homeless guy who came in off the street into the hospital, and he was vomiting all the time. They thought he was a crazy drunk. There was a lot going on, but lo and behold, it was diagnosed at the end of the episode as cyclic vomiting syndrome, and he was given Migraine Migraine to sort that out. So if Migraine Migraine can help, then quite often manual therapy to the neck can help as well. In fact, a lot of the time it can help because it's both acting in the same way. Third thing you saw in the status there is vestibular migraine, and that one is a pretty nasty condition where you can actually get migraine attacks which are associated with a lot of dizziness. It can feel like you're rocking from side to side like that, or it feels like you're spinning. And it's not really that nice. And I apologise if you have got a vestibular migraine and you just saw that. What it is basically is that instead of pain coming from the neck, it's actually being perceived by your brain as something different, so you become dizzy instead. And the reason why I become dizzy is because your eyes, your ears and your neck all should be telling your brain the same thing about how it's all working. But if one of them isn't going quite so well, say for example one side of your neck is a bit tighter than normal, then what can happen is your brain gets tricked and it thinks that there's something wrong to that side, and often you can get dizzy and feel a bit off balance with that. We actually had a young gentleman in this morning who had this exact thing, and it was quite baffling, but thankfully we were able to get to the bottom of that one. What can also happen with a couple of other symptoms as well, you can get things like occipital neuralgia, which is an electric shooting type pain up the back of the neck. There's another condition called trigeminal neuralgia, which is a syndrome that causes excruciatingly painful zaps and zings down the side of the face, tingly teeth, tingly lips. It can even be sore to even blow their nose or chew. It's actually really nasty. That can happen. And of course, things like TMJ, so temporomandibular disorder. People often call it TMJ, but it's actually TMD. So quite often you can get jaw pain as well that's being referred from the neck, and actually you can get it vice versa as well. So it's really important just to look at all the different factors. And if you have got something that looks and smells like a migraine, if it's been diagnosed as a type of migraine, oh, that was another one. Hemiplegic migraine was another one, which is a really interesting one, where these poor people actually get migraine attacks and it knocks out half their body. It's like they've had a stroke. Now, if you get stroke-like symptoms, I can't be more clear on this, if you get stroke-like symptoms and you haven't had them checked by a doctor before, you need to get that checked out because, yes, obviously it's an emergency if you're getting numbness or weakness down one side of the body and it's never ever happened before. But sometimes we see that this happens, the MRI scans are clear, the blood flow is fine, they haven't had a stroke, and we're trying to work out what's happening there. It's actually what's called a hemiplegic migraine. And what can happen there is that the migraine attack, it grumbles away in that brainstem that like we're talking about. And it's like they've won the opposite of Tats Lotto, where instead of it just being like a stiff neck or a bit of a tension headache, it actually knocks out half your brain. The connections are much slower. You lose feeling in your hand or your leg, something like that. It's really quite scary to look at, and we have seen a couple of patients with that over the years as well. So and treated them successfully, I might add as well. So as I would say with all of these types of migraines, it's really important to note that, and I'll be the first to admit, that we don't fix everybody with all of these really unusual type conditions, because quite often there is a brain component to it. It's neurological. However, if all the scans are clear, you've been to your neurologist, the medications aren't working, I guess the upshot on the point that I'm making here is that you should get the upper cervical spine checked, because if it is the upper cervical spine that is the problem, then we can actually assess it, treat it, see what changes symptomatically. And what we'd be looking to find is that there's less symptoms, don't last as long, not as intense, and you might find that there's less medication needed to actually get these things under control. And really that's the only way that you can tell for these types of conditions, if we can actually make a difference, actually just start treating it and see what happens. And of course, what our policy is here is we don't treat past 5 sessions if we're not getting a positive result. And typically we'll be able to tell in the first 2 or 3 if we're making a difference from there. If you do know someone who would be interested in listening to this video, please type in below, because this is something that I've gathered people don't usually talk a lot about. We have had a lot of contact from overseas about these sorts of conditions as well, given that a lot of people aren't brave enough to speak about them on Facebook. Please type in below. We can obviously start a conversation with you online, online, but off the comments, to work out if there's something that we can do to help out. The only way that we can know is that you ask a question, we do a bit of assessment and see what we can do, because look, my policy is also that we don't make promises that we can't keep. So we come in, we assess, if it's something we can help, we can typically tell you on day 1, and if we do decide to treat, we're not getting anywhere within the first 5 sessions, then we call it quits, because we know that people don't like to be led down a garden path from there. I hope that's been very helpful for you today. It is day 3 of National Headache and Migraine Awareness Week. We'll be having a new video tomorrow about another condition. I don't remember exactly what it was, but tomorrow we will be talking about that. I won't be actually here at the clinic. It will be in a much nicer location. It might be down the park or something, different bit of scenery. I hope that's been helpful. I hope you have a good afternoon, and please type in like, share and comment below. Hope you have a good week, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Cheers, bye for now.